we all know that the invasion angle didn't happen exactly like we wanted. And it's no fault of anybody's at WWE. It's the cards they were dealt because they couldn't afford to bring in all of the top stars. You see guys on your screen like Goldberg, Kevin Nash, Sting, Hogan, Hall. They were all sitting on these $2-3 million a year deals that Turner was still paying them. And if they went to the WWF, those deals were null and void. They didn't make any of that money. So in order to keep making that money, they had to sit at home. Most of them were okay with that. You had guys like Booker T and DDP that said, no, I want to come in, I'll take my chances and I'll work. And you could argue that it did well for Booker T. DDP, that's a little less to be desired. My point is, what I want to do with this is I want us to look back at the invasion. My brother from another mother, Jared Justice, and I looked a little bit at this a couple weeks ago, but I want to get your all's take on this. If the invasion happened as we wanted it to happen, Rory, I'm going to go to you first, and we had all of these major players, and what would have happened had we had these guys up against Austin, Rock, Taker, Mankind? Like, how awesome would it truly have been to see these guys go at it?
I'm going to start out with what could be a slightly, I'll call it a warm take, maybe not a hot take. I think if you really did have everybody at your disposal from WCW to do a proper invasion angle, then first off, you're probably not ending it at Survivor Series. You're probably ending it at WrestleMania 18, the biggest show of the year.
Yep.
And I would argue this could be the one thing that could have made Rock Hogan even bigger. You could have still had that incredible epic match.
Yep.
It would have headlined instead, in hindsight, right?
Right.
But imagine if you already from the get-go had Hogan and Nash and Hall, the NWO, doing their thing. They're as invaders, like they are. I mean, that was their whole identity. So it would make sense for them to be the spearhead of this Invasion Alliance movement. And then you have your ups and downs throughout the rest of 2001. But you build to Rock Hogan basically saying, "Hey, we are the de facto leaders of our respective companies. So we're going to put it all out there at Mania to determine who goes who what company ultimately wins out." And at least that is probably the only thing that could have made Rock Hogan even more incredible, because at the end of the day, there really weren't a lot of stakes in that match. Not complaining, it was still an incredible match. But adding the stakes to that could have easily made it an argument for the biggest WrestleMania main event of all time, if you were being sincere about it. And as far as everything else goes, I mean, the possibilities are endless, right? Like that's the whole wonderful thing about it. But I think, of course, the issue being is that you are basically taking the biggest egos of a very ego-driven industry.
Bingo. That's it.
And putting them all in a room and saying, "Hey, somebody's got to lose." So good luck, right? To me, so I'm a big fan of just thinking about where it ends and then filling in the gaps along the way. Kind of why I like the Triple H era. But to me, Rock Hogan seems like a great final last ditch effort by WCW to win the whole thing. But along the way, though, you have, if you really do have your option to get Sting and Taker, right, which is always the thing that everybody says, or you get Goldberg Austin, and maybe that's also on the Mania card. But the thing is, like, how do you move throughout the year with that? Because you can't just throw all these guys out at once, right? You have to pace yourself. You're not gonna pace yourself in the Vince McMahon era of storytelling, because you're probably gonna hot shot some things. I would argue that if Hogan comes in March at WrestleMania 17 or the night after or what have you,
I don't know that you get to Rock Hogan all the way to 18 in that era of storytelling. I have a colleague at work. Many of you may know if you follow college football, Josh Pate. I work with the guy. He's as much fun as he seems to be on camera. But he says that Rock Hogan is the last flashbulb moment in wrestling history, because it's the stare off. It's, you actually see physical cameras going off in the audience. Rory, you brought up a great point. Andy, I'm going to throw it to you. You said that Rock Hogan is what would spearhead the ultimate battle between WWF and WCW. It could main event the show. Andy, Rory mentioned Austin Goldberg. I think I might actually give that one the edge over Rock and Hogan, just because it's the two guys that are the exact same look. It's the somewhat mirror images of each other in each company. Arguably the face of the companies in 1998. I know Hogan's the big star. Rock was about to go do movies, but Andy, Austin Goldberg. I mean, I know Goldberg injured Bret Hart. Maybe Austin would have said, "No, I'm not doing that," because he knows what happened to Bret. Andy, what do you think?
Or in kayfabe, he'd thank him.
Fair point. That is true.
So we're a tag team now. What are you talking about?
No, I don't know. It's such an interesting topic, because I think the invasion that we got was it was an idea that no one thought we would ever actually see happen. And then when it started to happen, all these big things started coming to mind of, the NWO is now going to invade Raw, and you're going to get Sting on Raw, and you're going to get Goldberg, and you're going to get this, that, and the other. And all these big moments are going to start to happen. And then when it happened, no offense, I love them, you get DDP and you get Booker T as the two main guys, when you've got a Hogan and you've got a Goldberg and a Sting that could have taken those places.
Yep.
And so it's a weird dynamic. Honestly, I think if they would have gone this direction, I think we're looking at Austin Hogan at Mania instead of Hogan Rock, because I think during the boom period of WCW was Hogan. During the boom period of WWE, WWF was Austin. And you put those two guys basically at the tops of their careers, right before it kind of falls off, in the main event of WrestleMania, and have them go at it. To me, that's the no-brainer of this generation versus this generation's top guy going at it to determine, supremacy of which brand and everything like that. But like you said, the egos thing, that probably would have ended in a DQ anyway, because nobody wanted to eat the pin. And so it'd have been a whole mess if we got everybody in the room together.
The egos got in the way of that actual match actually happening. I mean, that's why we got Rock instead, because Austin and Hogan didn't want to play together. And I don't know the details of it, of course, but I mean, it's evident that it's there, right? I think for me, it's it is egos, and you're not wrong, Andy, about like Austin being absolutely the top draw, right? The biggest draw in wrestling history. And then Hogan being the obvious biggest star in the company, because Goldberg can't do a Mania main event. Let's be real. But I think another avenue I want to kind of veer down a little bit here is, you talk about like DDP and Booker T being the only like significant names that they were able to pull from for the WCW side, at least in those early stages. And I mean, and Chris, you mentioned Vince's eagerness to just hot shot these storylines and get it going. But let's think about it. The NWO came around in 2002, February 2002, right?
Yep.
Goldberg, 2003.
Yep.
Or into 2002, 2003.
2003, night after WrestleMania 2003.
Yeah. Rey Mysterio, 2002.
Yep.
Right. Sting, obviously a different story entirely. But if you consider that those are 5 very significant names that are synonymous with WCW, especially from that time.
Yep.
Why do you not just wait?
Yep, I agree.
You could have had a regular WWF centric storyline throughout 2001, throughout the majority of 2002.
Yep.
And then whenever you get Goldberg, and we know that his contract's up in 03, night after Mania, right? Even better.
Yep.
Night after Mania, suddenly the show, it's Raw after Mania, and by that point it already had become a known thing that big things happen the night after Mania. Why not open the show with that classic NWO riff and the black and white, and there's no Raw music and there's no commentary.
Yep.
NWO just shows up, they hijack the show from the get, and then they say, hey, here's the invasion, here's where it's happening, in wrestling terms, right?
Yep.
But that way you have the NWO start the real invasion. And then if you've already introduced guys like Booker T and DDP and a whole host of others, Chuck Palumbo, had a good run with Billy there. Character aside,
had a context with Billy Gunn there, because I was like, where is he going with Chuck Palumbo?
I'm just saying you definitely had, and Hurricane Helms, right? We got Shane Helms out of there, like Kidman. There's a whole host of guys that really did come over and make a name for themselves out of the invasion. It just, the invasion storyline wasn't what did it, right? It was them just actually working themselves into the regular ethos of WWE.
Let's be honest, Rory, the invasion storyline wasn't just WCW, because we saw the ECW guys come in there. Rob Van Dam was a huge star from 01 to 06 or whatever. So you had him, you had Tommy Dreamer come in for a cup of coffee. You had Taz made a big name for himself.
Yeah.
So those guys did some really good stuff as well. I've got 2 reasons why the invasion angle could not work. You're probably not going to like either of them, but I've got 2 reasons. Number 1, you had the feud of the McMahon family going on with Vince, Shane, Linda, and Stephanie. So it made all the sense in the world to do the Cleveland, Panama City angle, where the name on the contract reads McMahon, but it's Shane McMahon, and that furthers the story. Now, I don't know that that's an excuse to hotshot everything. I think you still could have played this out a little more, especially because the McMahon family feud is going to last for forever. So I know the match was coming up at WrestleMania, but you didn't have to bring all the guys in. So I think that's one reason. And then, Andy, I'll throw to you for this one. It's an unfortunate reason, and that is the torn quad of Triple H in May 2001. Because the storyline there was, in 2001, Austin was turning heel, as he did at WrestleMania 17 as the world champion. Triple H had the Intercontinental Championship, and they were going to run roughshod 2-man power trip all the way through 2001, and that was going to be the main event of WrestleMania 18. Triple H babyface, Austin heel. So the Triple H torn quad in May, because this storyline, I think, starts around June, if I'm not mistaken, because the pay-per-view's in July, the Invasion pay-per-view. So, Andy, I think this Triple H injury could have thrown a huge wrench into what they wanted to do. And like Rory said, maybe even delay this.
Yeah. I think that played a huge factor in all this. And something else we haven't even brought up that, unfortunately we saw take place at WrestleMania 31, even though it was several years after the fact, is that I think a lot of these WCW guys knew when they come in, Vince wasn't going to let them win. Vince was not going to let them be the same people, carry the same characters. They were not going to reach the same status they were in WCW, because
unless they were previous WWF guys like Hogan, which right. That's an anomaly. Hall and Nash, right. That kind of thing. Yes, your point.
But Sting wasn't going to come in and be like the Undertaker. They weren't going to let him be to that level. Could they have stopped it? Probably not. But he would have done a lot of it in his power to stop, which is probably part of the reason why Sting took as many years as he did to actually try to go to WWE and do something in WWE. And so I think the idea of an invasion is always great. And the idea of, a company coming in, that's why what's going on with TNA and NXT right now is amazing, because it's actually not just an invasion, but they're working together and it's making sense. And obviously, they've got big plans for the TNA side of it and the NXT side of it.
Yep.
And we talk about all the time, when Forbidden Door comes around, what would a WWE and AEW card look like? Yep. But these things will never truly happen, because I mean, I'm going to say never, but it would be very
Let's say
rare
never,
to see
brother.
this actually happen because egos are too big.
Yep.
Statuses are too big. And, to be real honest with you, fans are so fickle. They want it 1 minute, they don't want it the next, and it's not worth even going through the headache at most points.
Yeah, let me tell you something from one of my favorite just minds, David Shoemaker, the Ringer. He always likes to say pro wrestling is about expectations. And the end of the Attitude Era and the buyout of WCW at the height of pro wrestling as an industry, you could not have bigger expectations for what you could expect or for what you would want out of that, right?
Absolutely.
And no matter what we want to say about, like, what if this happened, the timing was different, or if these people could play nice, I don't think there's anything that could have happened that could have lived up to the expectations we all had.
100%.
I mean, you had so there's just no winning in any way, shape, or form there. I think the one big issue that really came across, though, is that our expectations were insanely high, but on top of that, every good wrestling match has to have that little shred of, but what if? And the other big issue with the Invasion is that, aside from the Invasion pay-per-view, you never expected the Alliance to ever win.
Yep.
It didn't matter if they had Austin defect or whatever else.
Yep.
You knew that wasn't going to happen. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it's okay to know what the outcome is, but you got to pepper in a little bit. I mean, we knew Sami Zayn was not going to win the world title against Roman Reigns at Elimination Chamber with Cody Rhodes right up, teed up for WrestleMania. We knew he wasn't going to win, but there was a chance.
Yep.
And that's what was missing from the Invasion angle, or from the Invasion storyline overall, is that there was never that real threat that even perceived iota of a threat.
Yeah, I mean, to wrap it back around to SummerSlam 2001, I'm pretty sure as you go down that card, nobody from the Alliance won that night. I mean, the Alliance won at the end of the Invasion pay-per-view just because Austin defected. But at SummerSlam, nope, we were back to the WWF guys winning, and that was all she wrote. This segment is a whole lot of fun, and Andy, if they love what we're talking about right now, they're going to love our Thursday show. If you haven't checked out our fantasy booking show, the MCWF, where this is all we do is we fantasy book current guys in a show that is not like what we're doing right now, but it's available on our podcast feed, audio only. Make sure you're subscribed. Go check it out. And Andy, cheap plug, what we're talking about right now, man, is a small peek behind the curtain of what's to come for the future of the MCWF, right? And Andy is frozen. That's
no.
Okay. Oh, well, that's okay. We will keep moving because audio issues happen. All right. If you are just now joining us, make sure that you are checking out our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, subscribers are building and building. Viewership is doing great. We appreciate you guys so much doing that. We could not do this show without you. Otherwise, we'd just be talking to ourselves. Sometimes it feels like we are, but we appreciate your comments. Lots of very nice comments about how underrated our show is. We're not paying you guys to say that. We appreciate it so much. But again, if you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure that you do so. Hit that notifications bell so that you know each time we upload a brand new episode. All right. Andy, since you froze, I'll give you a chance to help plug the MCWF real quick. It's a small peek behind the curtain, right?
Oh, yeah. A very small peek behind the curtain because, what's coming up is egos go out the door and what we want will happen. And so it's going to be a lot of fun when that happens. But we're not done with this season yet.
We're not.
Right? We're getting closer and closer to that final pay-per-view, but I'm looking forward to it, man.
That is coming up this week. So make sure, again, you're subscribed wherever you find the podcast.